Welcome, dear friends. If you found your way here tonight, I believe it isn't by accident. Stories, after all, are bridges. We step onto them from opposite sides and sometimes meet in the middle. If you enjoy walking with me across such bridges, take a moment to subscribe and stay connected. There will always be more stories waiting for you here. The title of the story is I drove Uber at night to pay tuition and ended up picking up my own son who claimed to be an orphan. But before the shocking ride and the mirror that betrayed us both, there was a dinner table, a small wooden one, scarred by years of hot pots and spilled coffee, where the first crack began to spread. I came to this country with a suitcase, a notebook of recipes from my mother, and a dream so fragile it could have snapped in the first wind. What kept it alive was one reason, one face, my son Daniel. Every job I took, washing dishes, folding clothes, cleaning offices at midnight, was stitched with the same purpose. He would have the future I never did. A college degree, a career people respected. Stability. That night, I had cooked the kind of meal mothers save for small celebrations. Roasted chicken, a pot of rice, even a little apple pie from the bakery. I wanted to share the letter that had arrived from the university, though I suppose, looking back, I was also bracing myself. The tuition has gone up again, I said, placing the envelope on the table between us like a silent referee. Daniel hardly looked up from his phone. I know, I checked online, it's insane. It's more than insane, I pressed. It's impossible. Another $3,000 this semester. I'll have to pick up more shifts. He set his fork down. Or maybe I don't do pre-med anymore. The words fell like a stone into water, rippling through every corner of my chest. Pre-med, the track we had chosen, the sacrifice every dollar had been bent toward. What are you saying? I asked quietly. I want a switch. Music, composition, maybe production. It's what I love, Mom. It's what I'm good at. I laughed, though there was no humor in it. Music, Daniel, that's a hobby, not a life. Not when we've worked this hard, not when. He cut me off, his voice rising. We've worked, or you've decided for me. I never wanted to be a doctor. That was you, always you. The air grew heavy. The smell of roasted chicken turned sour. The little kitchen, usually warm with the clutter of our ordinary lives, felt suddenly like a courtroom. I gave up everything, I said, my voice breaking. You think I scrub office floors at midnight because I enjoy it? I did it so you wouldn't have to live the life I did. And maybe I don't want that life either, he shot back. Maybe I want mine. The silence that followed was louder than the shouting. He pushed his chair back, the legs scraping the linoleum like nails across glass. His plate remained half full, the chicken cooling under the kitchen light. Without another word, Daniel grabbed his jacket and walked out the front door. The echo of it slamming carried through the house like thunder. And just like that, the crack at our dinner table widened into something darker, something that would follow us both into the long night ahead. The house was unbearably quiet after he left. The clock ticked like a hammer against the walls, the half-eaten food sitting heavy on the table, as though even the chicken itself knew the fight had spoiled everything. I washed the dishes with hands that trembled and tried not to imagine where my son was walking under that black sky. But bills do not wait for heartbreak. When the clock reached 9, I changed into my black windbreaker, tied my hair back, and slipped into the driver's seat of my aging Toyota. The streets outside glistened from a late drizzle, the lamps stretching yellow halos onto the wet pavement. The car smelled faintly of lemon wipes and old coffee. It was the smell of my second life, the one that began only when the world was sleeping. Driving for Uber was never part of the dream. But dreams are expensive, and tuition is a beast that grows hungrier every year. So I drove. I drove when my back ached, when my eyes burned, when I wanted nothing more than to curl up in bed and forget the weight of everything. The first ride came quickly. A couple fresh from a bar, the girl laughing too loudly, the boy holding her elbow as if the sidewalk itself might betray them. They smelled of whiskey and perfume, of a world young and reckless, nothing like the world I lived in. I dropped them off near the river, watched them stumble toward the lights, and reminded myself why I was out here at all. Each ride told a story. A nurse with tired eyes who had just finished a double shift. A businessman talking too loudly on his phone about deals that sounded like another language. A tourist asking if the city was always this alive at night. I nodded, though inside I thought, it is alive for those who can afford to play. For the rest of us, it is survival. As the hours stretched on, fatigue settled deep into my bones. The neon signs blurred at the edges, and the hum of the tires became a lullaby I couldn't give into. I thought of Daniel, where he was if he was safe, if he hated me as much as his words suggested. I thought of his small hands once clutching mine on his first day of kindergarten, how he used to whisper, "Don't leave yet, Mom." And here we were now, with him slamming doors to get away from me. Around 2 in the morning, the streets thinned. Bars closed, offices darkened, and only the occasional figure crossed an intersection. The city belonged to cabs, delivery trucks, and people like me, mothers who had traded sleep for survival. The app pinged again. Another ride request. I rubbed my eyes, sipped what was left of my lukewarm coffee, and turned toward the pickup spot. I didn't know then, of course, what awaited me. I didn't know that in a matter of minutes, the night would twist into something I could never have imagined, that the passenger I was about to collect would shatter whatever remained of the fragile distance between my son and me. I only knew I was tired, and the city at midnight seemed endless. The request came from a quiet street near the edge of downtown, where the buildings were shorter and the neon signs flickered instead of blazed. I slowed the car as the blue dot on the map pulsed, waiting for me to arrive. A figure stood beneath a street lamp, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. Beside him, a young woman clutched her purse and leaned close, as if the night were something she needed protection from. I rolled down the window. "Uber for Daniel?" I called, glancing at the name on the screen. "Yeah," the young man said, pulling open the back door. His voice was casual, careless, the kind that belongs to someone who has not yet learned the world can break him. And then, as he ducked into the car, I froze. The street lamp caught his face in a clear wash of light. It was my son. Daniel slid into the back seat, his arm draped around the girl's shoulders as though she were the only anchor in the world. He didn't notice me at first. He was too busy talking to her, whispering in that tone boys use when they are trying to sound older, more certain than they are. "You know, ever since my parents died," he said softly, "I've had to figure everything out on my own. It's been hard, but it makes you stronger, right?" The words hit me like a fist. My parents died. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly the veins in my hands stood out like ropes. My heart beat against my ribs, not with fear but with something far sharper, betrayal, disbelief. My own son, alive and breathing in the backseat of my car, erasing me from his story to win sympathy. The girl gasped, her eyes wide with sudden pity. She touched his arm tenderly. "I'm so sorry, Daniel. I had no idea. You never talk about it." He lowered his gaze, shaking his head as if the memory were too painful to bear. "Yes, I don't like to. But sometimes, you just need someone who understands." I could feel my throat close, words pressing against it, desperate to be spoken. "I am here. I am alive. I am your mother," but I swallowed them down. The rearview mirror became a traitor. Every glance showed me his face, my boy telling the world I no longer existed. I saw him smile faintly at the girl, saw how her eyes softened, how she believed him completely. 1,000 memories clashed in me at once. Daniel at 10, holding up a spelling bee trophy with both hands. Daniel at 12, practicing piano until his fingers ached. Daniel at 16, storming upstairs after another fight about grades. And now, Daniel at 19, erasing me with a single lie. The city blurred past outside the windows. I drove on autopilot, my knuckles white against the wheel, my chest burning with unshed tears. He didn't know. He didn't know who was driving him. He didn't know that the mother he had killed in words was right there, breathing the same air, listening to every syllable. And I didn't know how much longer I could stay silent. The car was warm, but I shivered. My fingers tapped against the steering wheel, a nervous drum I couldn't quiet. In the mirror, Daniel leaned closer to the girl, lowering his voice to a near whisper, as though the lie could only live if it stayed soft. "I've been on my own a while," he said. "Working jobs, trying to save enough to keep school going. No one really understands what that feels like." The girl, wide-eyed, reached for his hand. "You're so strong. I can't imagine growing up without anyone." Each word was a needle. I wanted to shout that he did have someone, that every wrinkle in my face was a receipt for years of sacrifice, every scar on my hands a record of nights I'd scrubbed other people's kitchens so he could sit in classrooms I never had. But I bit my tongue until I tasted iron. The streets outside blurred past, liquor stores with their neon signs still humming, diners with half-lit windows, a bus stop where a man huddled against the cold. Life carried on, indifferent to the war erupting inside my chest. Daniel laughed softly, and even that laugh was borrowed. It wasn't his usual one, the laugh I knew from home. This was polished, practiced, designed to charm. I watched him through the mirror, and for the first time in 19 years, I didn't recognize my son. The girl asked gently, "So, do you still have family? Anyone at all?" Silence hung in the car. Daniel's eyes dropped. His thumb traced circles on her palm. "No," he said finally. "It's just me." Something inside me cracked. I gripped the wheel tighter, my nails digging into the worn leather cover. My chest rose and fell too fast. I had to swallow the cry rising in my throat. "It's just me? What am I, Daniel, a ghost?" At the red light, I risked one more look. His head was bent, his hair falling across his forehead like when he was a child, when I used to brush it back before he slept. For an instant, I saw the boy he had been, not the stranger inventing a tragedy. And that was worse than anger, it was grief. I whispered so softly it almost disappeared under the hum of the engine. "I am still here." Neither of them heard. The light turned green. I pressed the gas and drove on, the words hanging in the air like invisible smoke, filling the car even though no one else could see them. By the time we reached their stop, my heart felt like it had lived a lifetime in 20 minutes. I pulled to the curb, my hands trembling on the wheel. "Thanks," Daniel said casually, opening the door, still not looking at me. And I wondered if he had looked, just once, straight into my eyes in that mirror, would he have seen me? Or would he have still seen no one at all? The girl hesitated at the curb, her hand still resting on Daniel's arm. "Do you want me to cover your half tomorrow, for books?" she asked. Her voice was sweet, gentle, so full of trust it almost broke me more than his lie had. Daniel nodded quickly. "If you don't mind, things are just tight right now." It was then that her eyes caught something sticking out of his backpack. A folder, half-zipped, with the university seal stamped across the corner. She tugged it free before he could stop her. "What's this?" she asked, unfolding the paper, her brow furrowed as she read. "Payment due, parental contribution required, signed by Margaret Alvarez." The silence in the car grew so sharp it could have cut glass. I froze, my breath locked in my chest. There was my name, printed in black ink, undeniable. Daniel snatched the paper back, his face burning red. "It's nothing, just old forms." The girl stared at him, confusion clouding her features. "But you said you didn't have parents. You said you were alone." He stammered, fumbling for words, his charm cracking like thin ice. I meant not in the way you think. My mom, she's not really there for me." The words were meant for her, but they sliced into me like knives. Not really there. I wanted to laugh, to scream, to roll down the divider and tell her about the hours I drove through nights like this one, about the blisters, the missed meals, the endless exhaustion, all so he could sit in classrooms with bright lights and clean floors. The girl's eyes narrowed. "Daniel, are you lying to me?" He shook his head desperately. "No, I didn't want to explain everything. It's complicated." And then, unable to stop myself, I let one sentence slip out. My voice was steady, low, but edged with something raw. "Complicated doesn't mean pretending your mother is dead." The words filled the car. Daniel froze. The girl's head jerked forward, staring at me, then back at him. His eyes finally lifted to the mirror. For the first time that night, our gazes met. Recognition struck him like lightning, his face drained of color, his mouth opening but no sound coming out. The girl whispered, "Wait, you know her?" I didn't look away. Neither did he. And in that suspended moment, I realized the lie he had spun so easily had unraveled, strand by strand, until nothing remained but the truth we could no longer escape. The girl's hand slipped from Daniel's arm as though she had touched fire. I should go," she whispered, fumbling for the door handle. Her eyes darted between us, me in the front seat, rigid as stone, and him in the back, pale and trembling. "Wait, Jess." Daniel's voice cracked, but she was already halfway out. "No," she said firmly. "You lied to me, Daniel, about the most important thing. If you can lie about your own mother, what else can you lie about?" Her voice shook, but the conviction in her words was clear. She slammed the door shut, her footsteps echoing down the wet pavement until the night swallowed her. The car was suddenly too small. The silence between us pressed against the windows, thick and suffocating. Daniel slumped back against the seat, his hands clutching the straps of his backpack as if they might hold him up. "You weren't supposed to be here," he muttered. My knuckles whitened against the steering wheel. "And I wasn't supposed to be alive, was I?" His eyes flicked up to the mirror, then away. "It's not like that. Not like that." My voice rose, sharp and trembling. "You sat in this car, Daniel, and told a stranger I was gone. Do you know what that does to a mother, to hear her child erase her life with a single lie?" He pressed his palms against his face. "You don't get it. You never get it." "Then make me," I said, twisting in my seat to face him fully. "Make me understand why my son would rather invent a dead mother than admit the living one is out here killing herself to pay his tuition." His shoulders shook. When he finally dropped his hands, there was anger in his eyes, but also something else. Fear, shame, maybe both. "Because I can't be what you want," he spat. "I can't be the doctor you dream about. I can't carry your sacrifices like chains around my neck. Every time you talk about tuition, every time you remind me of how hard you work, it's like you're telling me my life already belongs to you, and I can't breathe in it. So yeah, I lied. I lied because it's easier than admitting the truth, that I don't want the life you built for me." The words hung heavy, cruel and bare. I swallowed, my throat aching. "So you kill me off instead? You kill me in your story so you can live in it without guilt." His jaw tightened, his eyes burning with tears he refused to let fall. "Yes," he said finally, "because if you're gone, I don't have to explain why I'm not the son you wanted." The admission split me open. Pain and fury, love and grief, all of it surged through me at once. But beneath the storm, I felt something else too, the faint flicker of truth. Not about me being gone, but about the weight I had unknowingly strapped to his shoulders. I turned back to the wheel, staring at the rain that had begun to drizzle against the windshield. The night outside was endless, but inside the car, we had reached the point where running wasn't possible anymore. For the first time, my son and I were trapped with nothing between us but the raw, unvarnished truth. The drizzle outside turned into a steady rhythm, the kind that made the city feel wrapped in a gray blanket. I sat still, the wipers swiping back and forth, marking time in a silence that felt endless. Behind me, Daniel shifted. His breathing was ragged, uneven, the sound of a boy caught between pride and surrender. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. "You want to know why I lied? Why I made up that story about being on my own?" I didn't answer. My hand stayed on the wheel, my eyes on the road ahead that I wasn't even driving anymore. Because I wanted her to see me, he said. Not the son of some overworked immigrant mom who's killing herself so I can pretend to be something I'm not. I wanted her to see me, the person I really am. I turned, finally, to face him. And who is that, Daniel? Who are you that you can't be with me? His jaw clenched. For a long moment, he looked like he might shut down again. But then he unzipped his backpack and pulled out a worn notebook. The edges were frayed, pages thick with scribbles, notes, staff lines, and lyrics. He held it like it was both a shield and a confession. "This," he said, "this is me." I took it, hesitating. The ink bled in places where his hand had pressed too hard. Fragments of songs filled the margins, lines about loneliness, about light breaking through cracks, about a boy searching for a place to belong. I swallowed hard. "You've been writing music?" He nodded, his voice cracked when he answered. "Since freshman year, I sneak into the practice rooms after class. I've got demos on my laptop. My friends and we've been recording stuff in a basement studio. It's real, Mom. It's not just a hobby, it's who I am." I flipped another page, seeing chords and rhythms I couldn't understand but knew meant everything to him. "You should have told me," I whispered. "You would have shut it down," he said bitterly. "Just like tonight, you'd have reminded me about the bills, about Dad, about every sacrifice. I was scared you'd never hear me, that you'd only ever hear what you wanted me to be." The rain drummed harder against the glass. I looked down at the notebook in my hands, then at the boy, the young man, sitting in my back seat. His eyes were wet now, not with rage, but with the fragile honesty of someone who had run out of lies. "I didn't erase you because I hate you," he said, voice breaking. "I erased you because I didn't know how to carry you and still be myself." Something in me softened, even as the hurt remained. I thought of my own father, how he had wanted me to become a teacher instead of leaving home for America. I thought of the letters he had written, begging me to stay, reminding me of duty, of family, and how I had left anyway. Now, decades later, my son was staring at me with the same desperation I once carried in my chest. The notebook weighed heavy in my hands, not because of the paper, but because of the truth written all over it. Daniel wasn't running from me, he was running toward himself. And I had been standing in the way. By the time I started the engine again, the streets were nearly empty. The rain had slowed to a mist, turning every traffic light into a blurred halo. I didn't drive toward home. I didn't even know where I was heading. I just let the road carry us, mother and son in the same car, yet separated by years of unspoken words. After a few minutes, I pulled into an empty grocery store lot. The place was dark, except for one stubborn lamp buzzing overhead. I turned off the ignition, and silence filled the cabin. Only the ticking of the cooling engine remained. Daniel stared out the window, his reflection faint in the glass. He looked older in that moment, not because of his age, but because of the weight in his eyes. "You used to love mornings," I said quietly. My voice felt too loud in the hush. "Remember, when you were little, you'd tug at my sleeve before the sun came up, begging to ride your bike while the streets were still empty." He didn't answer, but his shoulders softened. I reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a napkin, wiping at the fog on my side window. Through the clearing, the first thin streaks of pink were breaking across the horizon. Dawn was arriving, whether we were ready or not. "You think I don't understand," I said, still watching the light spread. "But maybe I understand more than you realize. I left my own father behind for a dream he didn't believe in. He wanted me safe. I wanted more. He thought I was ungrateful. Maybe I was, but if I hadn't taken that risk, you wouldn't even be here." Daniel turned to me slowly. His mouth opened, but he didn't speak. I was terrified, I continued. Terrified of disappointing him, terrified of failing, and still I went, because sometimes dreams are louder than fear. Maybe that's what you're feeling now. The words hung between us. For the first time all night, his eyes met mine without anger. They were tired, raw, but searching. "I just don't want to lose you," I whispered. His face crumpled, the fight draining out of him. He leaned forward, pressing his forehead against the back of the passenger seat. His voice was muffled, but I heard every word. "I don't want to lose you either, Mom. I don't know how to be your son and my own person at the same time." The horizon brightened, washing the empty lot in pale gold. For a moment, the night's weight lifted. I reached back, resting my hand on his shoulder. He didn't pull away. We sat like that as the sun rose, mother and son, bruised by the lies and the shouting, but still tethered by something neither of us could erase. It wasn't forgiveness yet. It wasn't peace. But it was a beginning. The sun lifted higher, painting the lot in soft light that made the cracked pavement look almost tender. For the first time in hours, I breathed without the weight pressing against my chest. My hand remained on Daniel's shoulder, and though he still kept his forehead pressed to the seat, I could feel the slow rhythm of his breath. The anger had ebbed, leaving behind something quieter, exhaustion maybe, or surrender. "Daniel," I said carefully, "I don't want to keep fighting like this. Not with you, not after everything." He turned slightly, enough for me to see his eyes, red from the tears he tried to hide. "I don't either, but I can't live under this pressure anymore. Every time you mention tuition or bills or how hard you're working, it makes me feel like I'm failing you, like I'm not worth the life you're bleeding yourself dry for." I studied him. His words cut, but they also rang true. I had repeated those reminders too often, thinking I was keeping him aware, grounded. Maybe what I had been doing was chaining him to my sacrifices instead of letting him build his own. "You are worth it," I said. "Don't ever believe otherwise, but maybe I have been too loud with my fears, too loud with my hopes, and maybe not listening enough." The lot was empty except for us, mother and son suspended in a fragile truce. "So what now?" he asked, his voice thin. I looked at the notebook still resting on the console between us, its pages brimming with music I didn't understand but knew carried his heart. "Now we find a way to do this without destroying each other." He frowned. "What do you mean?" I leaned back in my seat, gathering courage. "A gap year. 1 year to try. You work, you create, you see what this music of yours can become. But you do it responsibly, Daniel. No lies, no pretending you're alone in the world. You take care of yourself. And if after that year you see there's no path forward, you go back to school, not because I forced you, but because you'll know it yourself." His mouth opened in surprise, as though he'd expected another lecture, another refusal. "You'd really let me?" "I'm not letting you," I said. "I'm trusting you. That's different. Trust is harder than sacrifice, but I'll try if you will." He was quiet for a long time. I watched the sunlight crawl higher across the windshield. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Okay, 1 year. I'll get a part-time job, cover my own expenses. I won't dump it all on you anymore." Relief swept through me, fragile but real. "And I'll keep working," I said, "but not like this. Not until I fall apart. We'll make a plan. We'll share the weight, even if it's not equal." Daniel ran a hand through his hair, exhaling hard. "You know, I've been so scared to tell you about the music. I thought you'd laugh, or worse, look at me the way you did last night, like I'd thrown away everything you built." I softened. "I don't understand music, Daniel, but I understand what it's like to want something so badly you can't breathe without it. I left my home country for that feeling, so how could I deny it in you?" His face crumpled again, but this time not with anger. He looked younger, almost like the boy who used to race his bike at dawn. "Thank you, Mom," he whispered. "I'll prove it's real. I'll prove I'm not just dreaming." I reached over, brushing his cheek with my thumb the way I hadn't in years. "Don't prove it to me," I said softly. "Prove it to yourself." The lot was bathed in golden light now, the night fully gone. Daniel straightened, wiping his eyes with the sleeve of his jacket. He looked at me, really looked, and for the first time since the fight, I felt we were seeing each other clearly, not mother and sacrifice, not son and disappointment, but two people bound by love, struggling to meet in the middle. "We'll figure it out," he said. "Yes," I answered, "we will." And though the road ahead was uncertain, though bills still waited, though dreams could still break, something inside me shifted. For the first time in a long while, I believed that maybe we weren't just surviving anymore. Maybe, just maybe, we were beginning again. 2 weeks later, I sat in a folding chair in the back of a crowded basement. The air smelled of dust and soda, the walls painted black to make the string of Christmas lights seem brighter. Young faces filled the space, students, friends, dreamers, gathered to hear music that had not yet touched the world outside. On stage stood my son, Daniel. His guitar strap crossed his chest, his fingers trembling as they brushed the strings. For a moment, he looked small again, like the boy who once clutched my hand before stepping onto a school stage. Then he lifted his head, and I saw something else, courage. "This one's for my mom," he said into the microphone. The room quieted. He began to play. The notes were raw, imperfect, but they carried something truer than polish, a heartbeat. His voice cracked on the first verse, steadied on the second, soared on the third. Lyrics poured out about nights in a car, about a woman who worked while the world slept, about lies told and truth found again. I felt tears slip down my cheeks, not from sadness, but from something larger, relief, pride, a love too fierce to name. Around me, strangers swayed, some with their eyes closed. They didn't know the story, but they felt it. When the song ended, the room erupted in applause. Daniel lowered his head, shy and smiling, and for one instant his eyes found mine in the back of the room. No mirror between us this time, just mother and son, alive in the same truth. Later, as we walked to the car under the quiet night sky, he nudged me gently. "So," he said, "was it terrible?" I laughed, wiping my cheeks. "It was beautiful, and so are you when you stop pretending you're alone." He smiled, sheepish, but lighter than I had seen him in years. That night, as I drove us home, not for Uber, not for anyone else, just for us, the city lights didn't feel as heavy. The road stretched wide, filled with possibility. For the first time, I wasn't driving only toward survival. I was driving toward a future we were finally choosing together. Thank you, dear listener, for sharing this journey with us. Stories like this remind us that family is never simple, but always sacred. May you hold your loved ones close, forgive where you can, and fight for each other when it matters most. I wish you health, peace, and happiness in your homes. And if this story touched you, consider subscribing so we can keep walking these bridges of words together. Until next time, take care of yourselves and of your families.